Welcome to the Blackout Show, presented by the Guillen Grid, a show about the Chicago White Sox baseball, the good, the bad, the ugly. We'll debate what's working and what's not on the south side of Chicago. It's old school versus new school baseball. And most importantly, we're keeping all the receipts.
Yo, what is up, everybody? I'm Gonzo, and with me tonight is Elijah Evans from Just Baseball Media and Future Sox. Elijah, how are you doing, my friend?
What's going on, my man? It's good to be here. Appreciate you having me back on the show.
So, last year, I feel like me and you, with entering this season, we've had a lot of receipts from basically doing the same exact scheme a year ago with Grant Taylor and others, but Elijah, before we get into conversation about the minor league system and the MLB draft, I just want to say, for the most part, I don't feel like me and you are really going to touch on too many guys that weren't in this picture from our last discussion about this. I feel like for me and you, we're just going to basically put emphasis on guys that we might have talked about at the very low A, and then basically more of a, I don't want to say redemption in our rankings of this system, but we get to retool our rankings at least coming soon. So I feel like that's where the basis of this is going to be. Is that how you're looking at this at the moment?
Yeah, for sure, man. And this is the time of year where it's, I think, we get 2 months into the season, right? And that's when you can really start to look at some things seriously. Obviously, we're tracking in April, we're tracking in May, right? But like for me, when you get 2 months of a sample of what guys are doing in the minor leagues, that's when you can really assess where they're at in terms of their development. The guys that have developed really well, the guys that have kind of, stalled out a little bit in their development, right? Like those are all the things that come into play here. I think July is when I'll be doing my, farm system top 30 rankings. So that's kind of the time when we're a month out at this point. It's June as we're recording here. So yeah, it's exciting to get to just dive into where the entire system's at right now.
Right. So let's just get down into the weeds here a little bit. I know tonight we're obviously going to talk mostly, at least farm system wise, about, or A, IA, and AA, but really quickly, let's just touch on AAA real quick. Obviously, we saw Chase Mydroth and Edgar Cuero get their promotion call-ups, and hopefully we see Kyle Teal come up shortly, Wilkie Gonzalez, and Peyton Pallette just got himself into Charlotte. So hopefully we can get him into the majors this season and hopefully get him into some high leverage spots, kind of like with what they did with Leisure or originally. Is that basically how you're seeing, at least from AAA, the rest of the year here?
Yeah, I think so. Mentioning Colson as well, I think is worth it. Obviously, the injury now with getting hit by a pitch, so we'll see what happens there. But I think, I think Teal will be up at some point this year, even if it's not quite yet. I think Pallette's the guy where I would have just skipped Pallette over Charlotte, to be honest. I'm fine with him being there for a little bit, but I think given the way the Sox bullpen is throwing and what he was doing in Birmingham at the end of the stretch, I would have just said, let's go, Pallette, you're in the pen. But I think he'll be up there sooner than later. And I think there's other guys on the way. Like I said, I do think Colson debuts this year still amidst everything. I still think he's going to debut late in the season this year. And I think that, we're going to get a couple other guys, a few other surprises here and there, maybe an Addison Coffey, maybe, you get a second run through of obviously Gonzalez, maybe for the first time, but also Iriarte could be back later in the year and Strini could get another crack. There'll be some more guys that come up and join the roster. But yeah, the real excitement there is Kyle Teal above all else and hopefully Colson Montgomery as well.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree with that, and it'll be interesting to see what trade packages they package away here, what arms might be leaving, and how they're going to fill that. they shouldn't have an issue with that with the system. But I mean, listen, at the end of the day, you're gonna have to have arms to eat those innings up. So
Yep.
I'm not sweating it for at least the long term. Maybe a little bit in the short term, but I know
Right.
within the next 2 years, there's a lot of arms coming up. So it
No,
is what it
completely.
is. Let's get into Double A. So the Birmingham Barons, pitchers at least. So I'll bring up the big three and let you discuss where they're at currently. But obviously, you got Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, and Grant Taylor. And let's just start with those three before we get into that extra arm.
Yeah.
But go ahead, boss.
Yeah. It's been a weird season, right? I think these are the three guys where we were like, oh man, this Birmingham rotation is going to be untouchable. And now we've got Grant Taylor in the bullpen. And then we've got Hagen Smith in Arizona not pitching. And then we've got Noah Schultz, who's been a lot, taking a step back from last year, in all honesty, right? Like Schultz, we can start there too. I mean, Schultz is, I'm not worried about Schultz, I wouldn't say. I think for him, like last year, you got to remember last year was his first like actual season. He pitched like 20 whatever innings in 2023, but like last season was his first full year and he threw almost 100 innings between Winston and Birmingham. So like that is a big step for a guy who's really young, who has a lot of still figuring out his body. This is a 6'10" dude who's got, long levers and still a lot to figure out with his command over time. Last year the command was really good and this year it's definitely taken a step back. But at the same time, like I do think that it's something where we it's a patient matter with Schultz. I think you're going to have to wait a little bit. I'm not too worried yet, but it has been a little bit rough to see where he's been of late. And then with Taylor, I don't get it, man. Where are you at with the whole Taylor bullpen thing? Because I just part of me is like, okay, sure, you want to manage his innings, but I would rather see his innings managed by letting him start and go 3 innings than, not letting him be able to do that. Yeah. It's just, I don't get it. I think that you're limiting the upside of a guy who has a ton of upside way too much.
Yeah, look, he got injured, what was it, 17 or 19 innings there last year with the injury. So you kind of wanted to see how far he would go naturally before there was any fatigue in that arm. And I don't know, you heard a couple whispers about fatigue before they moved him. So maybe they just got a little worried, but I'm kind of with you. I'd rather them see him at that 2 to 3 inning stretch of starting these starts and then allow him to take off and see where he ends up at with innings. But if you have to go to the bullpen just to help with the workload of the management, I can understand it, but I don't want to see it. I don't want to see that role stay in the bullpen. And from my understanding, that's not the case. But I've seen a couple other people fear it, and I kind of understand where that fear is coming from, because we haven't really seen that development from at least that arm. So I know originally I told you that I can see him long term in the bullpen, but I'm also with you with that's a situation you want him to start in the rotation and fail himself into the pen. I know it worked with Sale and Crochet, but listen, those are just every prospect is different, and for his situation, I'd rather him start in the rotation with that role first.
I just think that this whole I've heard a lot of rumblings from the Sox organization, like, oh, this is your potential Mason Miller type of talent, and but Mason Miller was still a starter on his way up, even while dealing with multiple injuries, right? Like, I get it. And if you need to make that transition at some point, sure. Right now, he's just too good of a pitcher to pencil in a bullpen role. And I don't think they're doing it necessarily, but I don't really get it. I think letting him start 4 games or whatever, and then moving him to the bullpen, I just think it was a snap decision and probably a little bit early. I would love to hear the reasoning behind it because there might be a little bit more to it. But at the same time, I just don't want to see him stuck there. Meanwhile, with Hagen, I just don't think Hagen's healthy. I don't. That's the unfortunate thing. I think that Hagen, we're going to see what happens. They said they did imaging and it was clean and they're working on biometrics. The last thing we heard is that Hagen's in Arizona working on his biomechanics, just kind of adjusting some things, trying to maximize his velo was down 2-3 miles an hour in Birmingham a couple weeks ago. The slider wasn't moving to the same degree, the multiple inches less of movement than it has showing even in spring training, right? I still think Hagen's a great pitcher. I don't really buy that he's fully himself right now. The way he looked at the beginning of the season, the way the command was looking, like this is a guy who was very strong for the most part with command, even with a few lapses here and there in his college career. And now he's a guy who can't throw strikes. I don't know. I'm a little worried there. And I have to start considering, when we all start, you got to consider when you're thinking about it, the possibility of him getting surgery. You don't want to see it, of course, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, this is at the end of the day, like, I know that with our fan base, there's not a lot of patience, but if you truly want to see this succeed, you have to have as much patience as possible. And I don't care, if what happened the last rebuild with Han. This is a new era, totally different front office. So you just have to have that patience and give them some leeway here. I mean, I don't want to give anyone excuses, but that's just what the situation is. So, and I don't care how long that's going to take, because honestly, Elijah, we still got Vaughn and Robert still in the big leagues. Like you have two technical assets still from last era.
Assets? I don't know what you're.
I say that lightly, but technically those are the last assets originally, from the change of GMs, from the last rebuild, or I should say the Han era. So until those guys are gone, like, let's just face it, the rebuild's not over, So we can have a completely different conversations when that happens, which is probably going to be this off season. Right. But for now, we have as much time as needed to develop, and for this to work, this is all going to be coming from development. So, but yeah, as far as, and I know you didn't really talk much about Noah Schultz, but his numbers have been inflated, but with the same breath of air, I think he's gone. He had his career high in strikeouts, I think it was recently, with the 6 innings a couple times recently. So he's gotten that length of duration for the first time. So for me, when you're working the innings workload and you're seeing this pitcher go to that depth of getting to the third time, going through the third time or of a lineup, that's challenging for anyone in pro ball. So but that's what you want to see. That's what you're working to get him to. And I don't care what the numbers look like if that's what we're getting to. And
no, exactly.
I just think, and again, that's another kid that, was he 21? Or
he's young. He's
young. So honestly, you got guys like Junior who are just saying throw him in the big leagues. I mean, he could do whatever in the big leagues, right? I think he's got the talent to do that right now, but you want to build that. So he's still young. All these guys are young. So you take however long as you possible to get these guys developed and get them to the big leagues. So the last arm.
Unfortunate news on the Hagen Smith front. I don't know if you just saw, but Jack Caglione just got promoted to the bigs less than 2 months into the season. So that's, it's going to be interesting to look back at the Hagen situation where the White Sox were a clear, need to draft a bat situation. You had Cags and Weatherholt and Connor Griffin, who were all on the table there, and Brady Montgomery, actually, for that matter. And ultimately they went with the guy who they felt like they could develop, but look at what Cags is doing right now and even what Weatherholt's doing. And it's a little bit hard to not imagine that. So we'll see.
Well, I will save that for the end. I think that could be a good topic. But the last arm from Birmingham is who you mentioned it to me, because I totally forgot. I saw a couple of his highlights, but I haven't been on top of it as much as I want to be. But Jake, is it Palish? I'm terrible with names. Palish. So he's 6'4", right or lefty, 215. And in 35 innings, he's got 29 strikeouts, a .7 whip. I mean, he's doing well above his minor, mean of regret of his line of his, mean that he has. And gosh, 130 innings pitched. But this is a guy that if he's lefty, you'll probably see him as a pen arm. But the stuff is there. Maybe we see him in September. Who knows? But
an older guy who wasn't really super on the radar for most people, which is those guys are always fun to keep an eye on just because you don't really expect a ton. There wasn't a lot of expectation with this guy. He's been up and down, but is just kind of found his groove this season. You're looking at, a 1 ERA across his 35 innings on the year in Double-A. He was in Double-A last year out of the bullpen and was decent, but this year it just has been up a whole nother notch, and now he's making starts for a depleted rotation there with Hagen being out and Taylor moving to the pen. They needed to fill some starts, and he stepped into like the spot starter role, and it's been really good. I think at 26 years old, Palace should be in Charlotte tomorrow, honestly. Like, I think that you see 5 games like that out of him in a row where he's just, absolutely mowing down lineups right now, giving up since moving to the rotation. He's thrown 4 starts, given up 2 runs total, 7 hits total in 4 starts. Like, let's get him up to Charlotte, if not Chicago soon. I mean, you gotta catch lightning in the bottle sometimes with undrafted guys, with lower pedigree guys, and a guy like Palish is one who you're not expecting a ton, and he's been the best pitcher in Birmingham this season. So you might as well keep riding that out and see where it takes him.
Right, and I just want to touch up on a couple of bats here. Obviously, we saw William Bergolla in spring training, but I mean, he's done okay in Double-A this season, but he's a worthy guy to keep an eye on. If anything, if he does make it to the majors, he's probably going to be a utility guy. But I mean, who knows, right? I mean, he could take off.
It's tough, man. I mean, he's a funny guy. The profile's like, oh yeah, it's contact and it's speed and it's no pop and probably second base, right? But like, you can survive at the big league level as a second baseman if your bat tool, if your hit tool is that elite and you're stealing bags and you can play a solid second base. Like, they're playing him at short a lot too, which, like, I don't think he sticks at short, but like, they seem to think that he has a shot to stick at short, which makes, that is very appealing if you can stick it short. Again, probably more of a league average second baseman and or utility guy, but like fun piece to at least keep an eye on, given how young he is and already in Double-A.
Right, and the last guy here who we actually discussed him last year, Ryan Galaney, 6'2", 215. He's third baseman, but I mean,
he's
granted,
first baseman, but yeah,
who knows, right, at the majors where he's going to end up at, but probably a corner spot. But yeah, he's been just on a tear. I mean,
dude is
190 at bats, 314 average, 885 OPS. I was really curious because I know we talked about him last year, and I think he was when we talked about him last June or May. He was, I think it was just A. I don't think he even got called up to high A yet at that point. But to already be in Birmingham and raking, I'm actually really intrigued to see where, or even if he'll probably get to Charlotte potentially.
He should. I mean, this is. He's kind of, to be honest, I know this is going to upset some fans, but like, he's Tim Elko, but a little bit better in my opinion. I think he's a little bit more exciting. Tim Elko, he's a college guy, 5 years of college, or 4 years of college. I guess he was a senior signing at the time 2 years ago, later round pick, whatever, a different profile, but like, he's got a lot of pop. He's going to be at first. I just checked right now. I didn't think he had, but he hasn't played a single game at third this year. So he's the first baseman. But a lot of pop, but better approach than Elko in general. He walks a little bit more. He strikes out a little bit less. Like, you can live with right now 31 strikeouts in 50 games from a first baseman. That is very good, not just solid, actually. In Birmingham so far, in 29 games in Birmingham, he's got 9 walks and only 15 strikeouts. So he's making consistent contact. You see the power coming through, 23 extra base hits in 50 games this season. It's a sneaky, exciting bat, I have to say. And somebody that I think in my head is a little bit older, but he's only 24. He's going to turn 25 this summer. But, I think age 25 guy who's doing this in Double-A, especially in the Southern League, like, give me another 20 games or so of this in Birmingham, and I'm ready to see it in Charlotte, honestly.
And he honestly might even, at the beginning of next season,
he could push for a big league.
If he could break camp. I mean, that could be.
It could be. But at the least, I think he'll debut next year. Yeah, I think he could definitely debut next year. Yeah. Which is cool.
And even after the control, like maybe in late April, early May, you might see him maybe push Vargas out of first base. That'll be
you're Mr. Vargas, the number one hitter, who's the best hitter on the White Sox right now. But
yes. I'm just gonna save that for a different time.
Yeah, different day.
Because that's another thing. Me and you have gone forth a lot on a lot of different players, but I think that's one of those at the moment you got me on at the moment. But
I think so, but we'll see.
We all need our fair shakes, right?
Yeah,
and our debates back and forth.
Of course.
But let's get this to, I think that's it, right, for Birmingham.
Yeah, I think that's most of the guys. Yeah.
So going down to Winston-Salem, I'm gonna throw two of the arms out there and let you take over. But Adrian Batista, I know he's on the IL, but him and Christian is it Opar or Opar?
Yeah.
Opper.
Yeah, but Batista's a bummer
or-
because we haven't got to see him throw really, unfortunately. Batista's someone who I've told you about him. I mean, we've talked about him for a year and a half now. Like I've been high on him for a while. I think last year he was one of the more impressive pitchers in the system, honestly. And I think that he really has not gotten the credit he deserves. Went down in his first start of the season with an injury. We haven't seen him since. So I don't have a huge update there. I know he's in Arizona. I know he's throwing again. I don't know the status other than that. So excited to see him when he gets back, but it's a bummer because Batista's a guy that I thought, a 22-year-old just turned 22 a little while ago, pitching the way he did last year at 21 years old. Like I expected to see him in Birmingham sooner than later this year. But now, unfortunately, with this delay, he probably spends the rest of the season in high A. Maybe he gets a little taste in Birmingham if he comes back and really looks good, but realistically probably finishes out the year in Winston. And then at least, you go into next year with a guy who hopefully is ready for Birmingham. Opper, on the other hand, is a crazy one because Opper has, talk about a quick rise of a guy who, we really weren't looking at. Again, he was a high round pick. I like this stuff. I talked to him in Arizona this spring, and he said he really was finally healthy. He'd been dealing with stuff. He'd figured some stuff out last year, and I was like, okay, let's see what it looks like. Absolutely dominates Canapolis. He was ridiculous through those 5 games. The starts he made in Canapolis, stuff was off the charts. 34 strikeouts and 22 and a third. We both know those numbers are crazy. Not allowing much hard contact at all. Only allowed 12 hits in those 5 starts. Really all around, Opper was just exceptional. Gets up to Winston, and it's been a rough first 2 starts for him. But at the same time, 2 starts at the new level. He missed a start too because he had a little bit of soreness. So he just came back a couple of days ago for his second start. Gives up 3 runs, but gets 4 strikeouts in innings. Super young guy. He was pushed a little aggressively, I would say, after 5 starts. I think it was more of we need an arm in Winston. Let's just flip him to Winston. And he struggled through 2 starts, but in general, this is a guy at 20 years old. He'll be 20 still for another 2 months. Lefty, power stuff. The sliders, the sweeper, its fastball combo is pretty elite, honestly, in terms of metrics. If he continues to grow and develop at his age, I can see him being a pretty, he's going to make top 15 probably in my system, which is crazy because he wasn't top 30 coming into the season, but it's just because we hadn't seen him throw much, and he struggled in the complex league last year. But honestly, I do think that he's going to be a guy that you can look at as a top 15 and maybe a top 10 guy by the end of the year, honestly.
Yeah, no, honestly, this might be the first prospect that we're talking about this show that we haven't at all of the others.
Yeah. Sure.
He's a 6'2", 175 pound lefty.
He's gotten up a little bit since then. I think he's put on some strength in the last year for sure, which is good to see. And he's got more to give too. I think he could even tick up more. He was 96 for the most part in a while, and then he's ticked up since then. He's touched 97 this season a little bit, or 96.5 I think. So this is a guy at his. I could see him getting into the 97, 98 range in the near future. Honestly,
I was gonna say that. That's only going to help you with lean muscle, and
yeah, exactly.
Through up until now, through 7 games, a 3.9 ERA. And 29 innings with 41 strikeouts, 1.1 whip. Honestly, I like how you included your little objective with the rankings because if the rest of the season pans out as well as it's going with that rate with the strikeouts to the innings pitch, that guy, he could be pushing your top 10 at the end of the year.
With a lefty with his stuff, again, the numbers might come down a little bit because he's super young for the high level at this point. But what he showed already this season. 20. Yeah, what he showed this season already with his stuff, we know the way the organization has developed lefties in general recently. I think there's a lot to dream on there, and I might rank him a little aggressively just because I've talked to him, I've seen what he's done this offseason. You've seen it in these few starts in Candy. It's really projectable, and there's definitely risk there for sure. But I'm okay with some risk for a guy with that type of upside.
Yeah. Let's just get to the hitters here. I think we talked enough of the pitching for that's there. The obvious one's Braden Montgomery. And I'm really interested how they're going to course him through because we've already seen let's just say a Cam Smith in the class that already got out there with Houston. But obviously he's raking at every level to this point. And I'm excited to see this growth from him and the path that he's on. And hopefully he gets to Birmingham, maybe in July.
Yeah.
Maybe we got to see how high A goes. we have to go see how
Yeah.
high A goes here.
Yeah, it's been
because
the wheels
anything can
have come off
change
a
from
bit.
week to
Yeah.
week. Yeah, I obviously I saw it dip down to 270 range, but
Yeah, but particularly the past, so this is
Mhm.
Montgomery. This is not to discourage at all, but like this past 2 weeks, he's 6 for 49 in the past 2
Yeah.
weeks, 6 for 49 with no home runs, 16 strikeouts in those 13 games. He looks a little off. I think he got really in a groove there in the season, and then he got started to get pitched a little bit differently, and the mechanics have kind of drifted a bit in the past week or two. I'm curious to see what the White Sox do with him right here, because it's a tough developmental situation for any team when you've got a guy who's high pedigree, who dominates, and then they struggle. And that's, it's not, I'm saying it's at all, it's definitely not at all Colson. Like it's a very different situation, very different stage of the development. But like that first month and a half of just being on a rocket ship, now he's had 2 weeks in a row where he really is struggling. Let's see how it course corrects. I'm not worried about him at all yet. But at the same time, it's been a really interesting situation to see, him be like like he couldn't get him out for a month. And now you've got a situation where he is struggling a lot. So I'm curious to see how the adjustments are made. But at the same time, like Montgomery's in a good spot, all things considered. He's already in high A. I think that if he turns the ship a little here in the next few months, I still think he can get to double A by the end of the season. But like people were talking, at the beginning, I saw a couple weeks ago, it was like, oh, let's get Braden to the big leagues by the end of the year. Like, no, let's not get Braden to the big leagues by the end of the year. Let's get him to double A at most. I don't want him going anywhere past double A personally this season. I don't think there's any reason to push it that much. If this team was competitive, sure, maybe you're pushing him a little bit more. There is no reason he should play for the 2025 White Sox by any means. I don't even think he should play for the Knights this year. Get him through this stretch, get him into his groove again in Winston. When he really has a strong month plus in Winston, then you can send him to Birmingham to finish out the year, and he'll be there to end the year, and he'll be there to start next year. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I'm at that point where I want to see how the next 75 at bats go, because I don't even want to send him back down. I'd rather keep him there, keep him there at high A, and let him fight through this, because he's got the he's obviously got the talent to do it. But yeah, I'm with you. Hopefully by the end of the year, he's in Birmingham and that's been a winning culture in Birmingham. So
yeah,
you just want to continue building that. But
100%.
Next guy up, I think is at that level of Bergola, but I actually have him a little bit ahead of Bergola, and that's Uriel Perez.
Yeah.
I know he had a challenge starting the season, but it looks like he's starting to get going again. And I like how he's a little bit more filled out with his build than Bergola. But tell me a little bit about Perez, because I don't think we talked about him last year at all.
I mean,
we didn't, because he was in that trade.
He got that trade. Yeah, he's a small, compact dude. This guy is, he's listed at 6 foot. He's probably about 5'9", but he's, really a strong guy for that, stage of his career. And I think that he's shown, natural pop. So the ideal situation with him is you've got a kind of a different profile than a lot of these other infielders, right? Like you've got a lot of infielders in the system who are generally contact first oriented guys. And then you've got a Perez who, at his size, has 11 homers already in 49 games, 10 doubles. He's able to walk a decent amount. He's going to strike out a lot more than a Bergoya or a lot more than an Antonacci maybe. But at the same time, you have a middle infielder, probably a second baseman ultimately, who you can dream on some power from, which is something that they don't have a ton of other guys with that profile.
Yep. I'm with you. I think, honestly, probably has the best profile out of the guys we're going to talk about for your middle infield guys. The last guy, I know he just got injured here, but Sam Anatoshi, is it, or Anatoshi?
Antonacci. Gotta get you on your names, man.
I'm totally not a name guy, but that's
fair.
why I've got Slavko and the rest of the crew to help me out. But yeah, for 5th round pick from, by the White Sox, 6 foot. Well, they got him at 6 foot, but he's 22. And before he got injured, he had 120 at bats, batting .311 and a .930 OPS. So listen, at high A, start the year, that's what you want to see. And he was a very intriguing profile when they drafted him.
No, Antonacci's a stud. This is a guy that I liked coming out of the draft. I thought that it was a fun profile to keep an eye on, just because he was a JUCO guy, made his way into D1 baseball at the end of his collegiate career. got, ups and downs, right? But a very high contact guy. He makes a ton of contact. He gets on base a ton, in those 32 games in high A, 20 walks, 21 strikeouts, right? He makes a ton of contact. He takes his walks, 11 stolen bases. He has not a ton of power, but he flashed a little more pop than I expected, honestly, to start the year. Only 2 home runs, but 12 extra base hits in those 32 games. It's definitely a contact-oriented profile. But at the same time, I think Antonacci, he's played some third, he's played some short, he's played some second. A guy that can play all over the infield, who's going to get on base, the amount he gets on base is going to be a good piece to keep an eye on. I think he's a guy, he just started, he played his first rehab game yesterday, actually, at the Complex League, and he went 4 for 5. So I expect him back in Winston pretty soon, probably gets a couple more games there. So it seems like he's on his way back. Him getting back in that lineup is going to be a big help too, even for Perez and Montgomery, actually, who have struggled a bit. I think getting him in there in that lineup adds a whole nother layer of protection for those two, which should hopefully help them get back on track as well. Antonacci he's one of my personal favorite prospects. He's a guy that I will have borderline top 15 just because it's such a solid swing. He's consistent with it. He gets on base at a really high clip. It's a high floor for sure. I think there's some limit to his upside, but I think at the very least he should get to AAA. I think he's a big league bench piece probably at which you can't always say about guys at that lower level, right?
Right. I'm with you on that. Honestly, I think that wraps up our Winston-Salem conversation.
Not a ton of guys to talk about in Winston these days. Handful, but
good. I mean, that's all that matters, right? Give us a good handful.
Yeah, right.
But let's get to Canapolis. Let's see. Really, I only got one guy. I'm not sure if you do too, but tell me a little bit about is it Umberger?
On the pitching side? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting guy that I can't say I know a ton about Grant Umberger. Not a guy that I was super keyed in on. Undrafted free agent, a guy that signed with the White Sox last year, but his last 2 starts have been masterful. I mean, he has been carving. When did he sign with the team? I think he signed with the team. He was a Virginia Tech guy. He signed with. So it was just his offseason. The White Sox signed him on a minor league free agent contract. So kind of a pretty much no pedigree guy, but his last handful of games, he moved into the rotation for Canapolis because again, injuries, guys going down and out and stuff. And then his last 2 starts have been 6 innings of no run ball with 11 Ks and then 7 innings of 1 run ball. So 2 really nice starts in a row. A 23-year-old in single A with high end college experience. Like that's a guy that you can't read too much into in single A. I think you got to wait till he gets up a level to really look at what he's got, but at least a fun success story there in Canapolis from the past couple of weeks.
And that's what you have to scout. He's age 23. Lefty at 6'4", 225, 11 games, 2.45 ERA, and 33 innings with 36 strikeouts and a WHIP of 1.09. So yeah, I mean, we just gotta see where he ends, how his journey, goes through this season since we haven't seen much of him, but hopefully he works his way up to win some dash and gets moving because he's still at a pretty good age. But let's just move on to the hitters here.
You know who I'm ready to talk about at the top of that list. That's for sure.
All right, we'll go with your rankings. Go ahead.
Caleb Bonham is I'll spoil it here for you if you're cool with it. I mean, we're working on my guy Aram Layton's working on our top 100 at Just Baseball, and Caleb Bonham is a top 100 prospect in baseball, my friend. He is very, very legit. It has been crazy to see what this guy's done for a guy who, typically a high school pick, especially of his age at the time, like would have been in Arizona at the Complex League, right? He opens the year at 19. He's going to be 19 this entire season. He's not 20 until the winter, right? So age 19 season coming out of high school, you're expecting him to probably get a handful of months at least, a month or two, maybe like Walkout did last year in Arizona. Goes straight to Canapolis after he missed time in the spring too with a little bit of an injury, plays a couple weeks of spring training healthy, immediately sent to Canapolis because of how impressive he was in that amount of time, gets to Canapolis at 19 years old. He's got a 922 OPS in Canapolis to open the year, 15 stolen bases. I did not realize he had the type of speed that he's shown so far. He's going to strike out a little bit. He's a young guy, but 43 strikeouts, 35 walks. The plate approach has been excellent. He's taking his pitches. He's still whiffing a decent amount, but he's taking pitches really well. His contact rates are well above what I expected. 19 extra base hits before being home runs. The home runs are going to come with him, I think. The swing is very line drive oriented, but I do see him kind of ticking up in power as time goes on. Caleb Bonham looks like, a pretty premier prospect at this point. He's a guy that I can't wait to see what happens with him. And let's not do the thing where we say, oh, let's rush him. Because I know people are like, oh, he's doing so well, we'll just bump him up. Like, no, he's 19.
Yeah.
This dude is really good. And I do think, he looks better than I expected at short too. I think a lot of people I was talking to out of the draft are like, oh, he's going to shift to third pretty quickly. And he's playing some third, which is good. I actually like that the White Sox are playing him at third sometimes because
Agreed.
It sets you up for a situation. Unlike with Coulson, with him, it's like, okay, if he needs to be switched to third long-term, he already has reps there and he's already done it there. He does look pretty good at short though. That's the crazy thing. Bodimer has been better than I ever would have expected for his first professional season and is pretty clearly a top 8 prospect in the system now. And I think, it's hard to make a case that he's not. I think he's pretty guaranteed at this point as the third best prospect hitting wise behind Montgomery and Teal. Colt Braden, that is, and Teal.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I got no sympathy with ranking top 100s.
It's hard.
If I had to do that, listen, there'd be a lot of guys right on the fringe of the cost that are deserving of it. And I'm not saying I'll take anything away from him. I think having him in that range is solidified. At least for him, it's valid. I mean, 19-year-old,
he's been exceptional.
296 with a 922 OPS and 150 at bats.
And he's had some ups and downs.
Yeah. I mean,
he's had
I
some ups
wasn't
and downs, but it's crazy to see what he's done lately.
I wasn't expecting that out of him when they drafted him.
Nobody was.
What, 44th was it? Or
I think it was 40. I want to say
47th,
maybe 43rd overall. There we go.
43rd. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's just continual growth. Like he had a little bit of a blip, and then what does he do recently? The past 2 weeks, he has an 1167 OPS and has got on base at a 500 clip. Like it's crazy what he's continuing to do and not really slowing down. Like I think this guy's been, the most impressive. I think him and Opper have been the most impressive prospects in the system this season in terms of what they've shown in terms of their future upside too. So he's been a stud, and I think that he should spend pretty much the entire year there. But as much as I'm all about patience with these guys, like if he keeps doing this all season, you've got to give him a taste of Winston at the end of the year.
No, I think I'm right with you. But again, like I'm with you on the approach with like Brandon Montgomery, right? We got time. Let him develop out.
Plenty of time.
Right? Next guy up. Let's not get to the other big dog because I thought that you're gonna lead off with the other one first. But we'll leave Javier. Is it Mogollon?
Mogollon. Yeah.
Mogollon. Okay. Eventually, I'll get right with these names.
One day.
One day. Another guy in that 5'8" range. If that, but I know Junior might be happy because this is a Venezuelan boy. So who knows where he's going to pan out with that Perez and gosh, I'm blanking on the other one.
Bergoya.
Bergoya.
Yeah.
But I think that's a 3-headed dog right there that they're going to be competing with each other to one day get to that, hopefully that utility spot with the Sox. Is there anything about Javier you want to talk about?
Yeah, Mogollon's an interesting guy. So he was injured too. He just came back this weekend. Comes back in his first 3 games back. He's already got 3 hits and a walk. This is a guy who it's a super funny profile because he's really small. Like he's probably 5'6", honestly. He's going to be at second base. There's really nowhere else you can play a guy of his kind of build and stature. It's crazy pop for his size. Like comparatively, you look at a guy like Jose Altuve and you're like, how does Jose Altuve hit 20 homers a year, right? Like I'm not saying Mogollon's Altuve, he doesn't have quite that type of pop, but like he has some real pop for a really small dude. Hits the ball incredibly hard. 4 home runs already at the level. He's got 13 extra base hits in 30 games. But the approach has been really solid. Last year, he walked a lot, but he also struck out a ton. This year, he's still striking out, but that's definitely down significantly. In 30 games, it's 32 strikeouts, but 23 walks. You can completely live with a strikeout a game on average if you're walking well. And then when you get on base, he's got 12 stolen bases in those games. So it's a really unique blend of walking, getting on base skills, and some sneaky pop from a small guy, in addition to speed that kind of balances it all together. So it's hard to dream on the upside of a player of just his build, but at the same time, like he's got a lot of tools. He's very toolsy, and he's somebody that at least should continue to be fun to watch and see what happens. Definitely a riskier profile, even more than Bergoya, Perez, Antonacci, those other middle infielders, Bonner, obviously, right? Like he's probably the riskiest of this in middle infield core, but he's also got a lot of fun assets to be keeping an eye on. So we'll see what happens with him. But he's definitely, given he's 19, right? Like that's another guy who you're excited to see what happens to him next year and beyond, right?
The last one that we're going to talk about here while we wrap up the minors is Scott Podsednik's favorite outfielder, and that is George Wolkow. Another 19-year-old, 6'7", but listen, I mean, it is 150 at bats. He did start off the year struggling. It just seems like he's just battling the ups and downs of his young journey.
Yeah, I mean, Walkout is just about the biggest boomer bust prospect in the system, and one of the bigger ones in baseball, probably in terms of the range of outcomes for him. Like, there is a world where Walkout doesn't make it above high A, and there's also a world where he's a big leaguer mashing 30 homers a year. Like, it's truly that like far of a range of outcomes for him, and he's a great dude. One of my favorites. I am completely hoping he crushes it. Like, one reminder for him, like, he's younger than Caleb Bonner. Like, that's crazy to think about, given that he skipped a year of high school. He was drafted at 17. Like, even with a whole year of experience under his belt, he's still younger than a Bonner, right? Who was a second round pick, right? So it's been rough so far. But with that said, I think the defense has come a long way. He looks really solid in the outfield. He looks like he can be a plus right fielder, in addition to the speed being more than we ever expected it to be for a huge dude. Stolen 14 bags already in 44 games is very impressive from him. It's been a little ugly, but I am not too worried about it yet. And I think this is just going to be coming to the, it's going to be an up and down process for his type of profile as he develops.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. It's going to be interesting how these journeys of these 19-year-olds develop and where they're going to end up at the end of this season alone. But Elijah, that wraps up our discussion of the farm system. And we are at 40 minutes here. So I think we talked plenty about this farm system and this outlook for this season. Let's move on to the MLB draft with the White Sox selection at 10. We are just about a little bit over a month away, give or take. It's like 10 days over the month. But boss, first and foremost, I know we talked a little bit of last year's selection, but honestly, and we talked about this a little bit through text, but just overall, I'm not as, I don't want to say comfortable is a word, but with this class itself, and it just sucks at the White Sox with that stupid rule that we have to wait until the 10th pick when we should be at top 3 at the very least. But it's just not a strong class in its entirety. And it sucks, but it is what it is. And I know me and you really want them to get a bat, but with how things are looking, I wouldn't be upset. And it's tough for me to say this. I wouldn't be upset if they drafted a pitcher, draft that strength, and just in case one of these arms that we talked about with Hagen or even Schultz, yada, 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 if they go down to injury, it's, if they get TJ or whatever, you still have a really strong combo at the top if you draft an arm. And we'll have to wait and see. But where's your thoughts before we talk about names? Where's your thoughts on this selection?
Yeah, it's a tough one. This draft is not great. It's not a great draft in general, and it's a super complicated draft where there's a lot of guys that could be great, a lot of guys that could kind of suck. It's a really weird draft. I've just started diving into it really the past week or two because I don't tend to get into drafts up till college playoffs come around and you really get to kind of get in that season and that groove. So I'm kind of just in my early stages of really diving into it. But like I think that you probably are getting a slightly safer player if you go the pitching route. But I think that the White Sox could get creative here and take a bat that's maybe an underslot option. This is what I've said to you, and then be able to stack a little bit of money for later in the draft where you can go attack some higher end college guys, maybe steal, a high school guy, pull a commitment away at a later draft pick or something like that. Right. So I'm really curious to see how it shakes out. I lean the route of going high school and trying to just swing for the upside because it's such a weird draft. Because I want to bat too. But at the same time, there was a couple college pitchers where it's like, not the worst thing to get another arm in the system and just really, really solidify the system as one of the premier pitching systems. There's give and take. I'm really not sure which way it's going to go. I could see it going either direction at this point.
Yeah, so let's just do this, right? I'm going to give a selection of choices, and I want you to tell me who you would go with and who do you think the Sox would select.
Okay.
All right, here I go. You've got Oklahoma right-hander Kason Witherspoon. You've got Texas A&M outfielder Jace Laviolette, is it?
Yeah.
And I know that there's a connection there in the front office.
There is, yeah.
That might be interesting if he drops. But then you have Tennessee lefty Liam Doyle. You've got high school prep shortstop JoJo Parker, who I know I put the clip on the show as the avatar to the show. You've got Wake Forest shortstop Merrick Houston. That's a guy before his slump was projected as a top 10 in conversations. You have Arkansas shortstop. Oh boy, get ready for this one, man. I already struggle with names.
I'm not even good at this one, to be honest. So
Aloy. I don't. It's Hawaiian, man.
I believe, but I that one's tough.
You would know better than I would. All right. So those are 6 that I kind of selected. Is there anything?
Yeah.
Do you think there's any names before we go into your selection that I might have missed that you would add in there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance that any of the top end high school guys could fall depending on money. I think that those guys being, Holiday's definitely going before 10, but I think that there's a world where one of Eli Willett, still Billy Carlson, and who am I forgetting? Kason Cunningham. Those are the 3 other high school guys, all 3, high school high-end shortstops. One of those 3 could fall, in which case I think that would be a hard player to pass on. But as of right now, I've seen those 3 projected largely in the top 8. So it's hard to gauge. But I think that if one of those 3 high school guys fell, the White Sox would have to just pay up and pay over slot to get one of those guys, in my opinion. They will all require over slot at the 10, which makes it a little complicated.
And maybe they also see, these front offices see that with the entirety of this class and say, hey, let's just take like the safe option with an arm. And then that is a situation where you're lucky enough to get a high school prep dropped to you.
Yeah. Cade Anderson's the other one. That's another guy I should mention, the LSU left-hander, who's a college guy who I could see the White Sox being interested in based on the left-hander kind of profile with funky stuff has developed the last year, especially. So we'll see.
All right. So I gave the 2 scenarios. Tell me who Elijah would pick, and then tell me who do you think the Sox will end up.
It's tough, man. I think I would lean JoJo Parker. I've been kind of riding the wave there a little bit. Left-handed, powerful swing, pretty high-end, approach, and the ability to really tap into power is what I've seen. I think that it doesn't seem like he's going to stick at shortstop from what I've seen. It kind of gives the gauge of more of a third baseman if his arm gets there, or second baseman if it doesn't. I think his offensive upside is a little more exciting to me. Kason Cunningham, if he falls, would be great. And then Kyson Witherspoon, I keep Kyson Witherspoon in terms of the pitchers is probably the one that I would lean to. It's a really unique, guy who's really blossomed, particularly in the past year. I think that the plus for him being a slider and changeup heavy guy could kind of appeal to the White Sox and be, the right-handed version of your, high-end college pitcher type of thing. I could see it going a different direction. I think I go Parker, and I think the White Sox. I mean, Laviolette is an interesting one because there's a connection there, and because he has a ton of power, you're not going to find better upside power. He also whiffs a ton. I don't know if I want a 26% strikeout rate in college as a first-round pick at 10 overall. It's intriguing because of the upside, but it's also very risky in terms of the profile for Laviolette. So I don't know. I think the White Sox probably go either Laviolette or Witherspoon or maybe Anderson because he's a funky lefty. This is a hard one, man. I really don't have a particular gauge right now. I hope I'll have a better gauge in a month from now, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I'm on that same path with you as far as like at least with this class, I've just started, and I could probably have a whole different opinion come right up to the draft. Right up to the draft, once I get some more
100%, yeah.
intel here. I've got a feeling. I mean, if it's me, I like your pick with Parker. If I were to go with the college bet, I know I talked to you about Murray Houston. For me, I know it's tough because I know he's got a small sample size, but I liked what I saw from the upside of it this season with the revamp that he had offensively. I do think he's one of the best defensive guys at shortstop. So that's a college bet I would hope would be in discussion there. But if it's Parker as a high school prep, if the other guys don't drop, I'd be happy with that too.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised that you said if Sox end up going with the pitcher from Oklahoma and go with Witherspoon.
I could see Witherspoon. Yeah. And then the other, I mean, she mentioned Steele Hall. I don't know if I just learned a little bit about him. He is going to be, I think he's going to be 17 still on draft day. High school shortstop with a lot of upside, more of a quick, twitchy little kind of shortstop with super plus speed, high end defense potentially. That could be an interesting White Sox. And that wouldn't be very White Sox-esque. So I don't really see it happening, but I could see a world where they try to chase the, super young high school guy and just see what happens over the next few years type of thing. But that's less likely, I would say, than most of those others.
Yeah. Well, I think that does it, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Good to talk about this stuff. I mean, we'll see what happens. Some people may not feel this way, but I do think there's a little more optimism within the White Sox world community in general this year than last year. I think that people are starting to see a competitive team, even if it's not a good one yet. It's more competitive than last year, and I think it's going to keep getting that way the more guys that get called up the next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because when it comes to the front office, I really loved what they did with the Crochet deal. But it still hurts when I look at that first move with Cease, what could have been there with the value originally. And I was really hoping that they would have selected a position player in that deal to combine with the core that they got. And then you go into that we were talking about earlier with Hagen Smith. You still had Weatherholt on the board. You still had Connor Griffin on the board, and you had Caglione on the board.
Yeah.
Me personally, I would be battling back and forth with Weatherholt and Griffin. And I know originally it was just because of the college bat. I liked Weatherholt, but I really struggled because Connor Griffin was that prep player that
he's tooled out for sure.
His upside is legit.
He's raking this year, so yeah.
Yeah. And you'd have to put a gun in my head for me to decide between those two. But at the end of the day, those are the two for position players that I would have been wanting instead of Hagen Smith. And I know what Bonnemer did in the second round, but if you want to go pitching, I would have went Sloan at that, at that range if you didn't grab a pitcher, originally.
Sure.
But between Bonnemer and even Dickerson, that was another guy. It was valid to have a discussion there too. But all in all, man, I like what we're seeing in Canapolis and A-ball. But yeah, I at least see where we're headed, and I just hope they can develop these core players coming up because that's all we can really hope for as Sox fans.
Totally, man. Well, I'm sure we'll talk soon at some point and after the deadline, and that'll be a good time to check in again. So we'll see what happens. But I appreciate you having me on. It's always good to talk prospects with you, man.
Yeah, you too, Elijah. So, I mean, hopefully we can get you on again. I know you might have some life updates to come. We'll get all caught up when that happens. But for now, that's all we got. And thank you for everybody watching. Elijah, thanks for coming on.
Of course, man.
And hopefully we can keep up with these receipts that we've been nailing on. But thank you, chat, for everyone tuning in and watching this discussion on the minor league system and our draft selection at 10 coming up here shortly. Thank you for watching the Blackout Show.